Mark Mori. They are our opening night gala film, Baristas versus Billionaires. This is a local documentary for which I'm incredibly proud of our community. I'm incredibly proud of the baristas here. I just want to take a moment really quickly. My name is Anna Shimei. I'm the executive director. I just want to acknowledge that we're here on Haudenosaunee territory. This is actually Seneca land, Deshowe, and we're really grateful to be here. So Nyawe. You are all welcome to answer or to ask questions. I'll be hanging out with you in the audience asking as well. Yeah, and my friend Tanner here is going to tap me if someone has their hand up. So I'm hoping that we can start by maybe each of you briefly kind of describing your roles in the film.
Why don't you come up here with us
Yeah.
until he comes? And even when he comes, we'll have you say, because I'd better that you look out.
Yeah, we're waiting on shortly to arrive Will Westlake, one of the baristas who's in the film.
So go ahead, you get started. What's the first question you have?
So Baristas versus Billionaires is an empowering and inspirational story.
There he is.
Okay.
Just in time, Will.
Yeah.
Well,
Welcome, everyone. This is one of the brilliant documentary participants, Will Westlake, and we're very, very grateful and honored that Will is here as well. Maybe we could kick it off by just saying, how did you meet Will, and put him on the spot immediately?
Sure. Yeah, sounds good.
Well, I just started contacting baristas here in Buffalo, and I found out that Will was one of the active baristas who was helping lead the union drive at his store in Buffalo, and I interviewed I think half a dozen baristas here, and Will was one of the more prominent ones, and you'll be able to see him in the film tonight.
Yeah, sort of exactly as Mark said it. We've been in this fight now for over 4 years with getting a union at Starbucks, and so to have sort of a director reach out, it's a little bit odd, right? Because 4 years ago I was working at Starbucks, right? But it's been a very cool experience, and very much looking forward to the film and being able to continue to bring forward all of the issues of the current Starbucks campaign and the fight that the workers are in to get their first contract. So.
I just wanted to know, Will, were you late to work a lot too? Were you late to work? Is that why Starbucks attacked you? Well, the question I have is these things, people talk about certain things. Let's say in the tableau of a Starbucks in Buffalo, New York, people are complaining about the conditions, and they're concerned about their health and safety, and they're not getting treated fairly. But when does the word union come up? How does that first come into your mind?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think a lot of people all over the country know they have the thought of, well, work sucks, or work is bad, or there's something I'd like to change about work. And what's unique about Buffalo is that it's not the first place where a barista said, oh, I think that we should unionize at Starbucks. Right. There are plenty of baristas all across the country in Montana and Kansas and Oregon, and people in other jobs too, who they say, oh, I want a union, but they're by themselves. They say it by themselves. They get fired by management, whether that's Starbucks or any other company that wants to fight a union. But in Buffalo, it was the first place where we had enough baristas say it at the same time, where we went public with a committee.
What year was that?
A group of workers. That was in 2021.
So it's pre-COVID. No, right around COVID.
It was, in the middle of
2020 is COVID, I guess.
Yep,
right?
yep.
And then when you're there, I'm just going to ask him questions. Yeah, don't ask me. Right. No, but I'm just curious because and again, I say this lightheartedly. I hope it comes across that way. I assume most people your age didn't even know what a union was. Union membership is very dampened. Well, it's very, very muted now. When I grew up, unions were, prevalent.
Yeah.
I'm in a union, the Screen Actors Guild. I mean, my father was in a teachers union, and were you aware of what unions were and what they did and what role they played?
Yeah, I got, I think, sort of lucky in a way of being in a cafe job and having a coworker, bring up to me the idea of unionizing, and I think especially in Buffalo, it's a much easier conversation. We have one of the highest union densities in the country. It's about 1 in 5 people in Buffalo are union members. And yes, you can applaud all the union
applaud for
members.
that.
We have
That's
teachers.
awesome.
We have
Thank you.
all of our government workers.
I think it's 1 in 10 in the rest of the
UAW.
country, right?
Yeah. And so, when we were first starting conversations at Starbucks, it was very much the case that a lot of people were able to say, like, oh yeah, my dad or my uncle was at the UAW here in Hamburg, or oh, my mom is part of NYSUT, the teachers union here in New York State. So,
And one of the things you'll see in the film is actually Will was at a successful union drive at a single coffee shop in Buffalo, and I think it was that experience that kind of prepared you for what happened at Starbucks, isn't it?
yes. In Ithaca, New York, actually, that's where the very first Baristas union was started, and I had worked there and sort of seen that process. We got to the end of it, and all of the baristas got a $2.50 pay increase. And I thought, well, isn't it interesting that any other cafe you go to, all of a sudden you're making minimum wage again, and yet that there's this one cafe, small place, 20 baristas, where people are making $5,000 more a year, and if they stay, they're getting pay increases far above that too. And so, it just made so much sense from that process of why wouldn't you do it again?
And one other thing I'll say in response to what you said, I mean, one of the things you'll see in the film is a little bit of the history of Buffalo as a union town. And several of the baristas talk about how their fathers or grandfathers were union activists, helped bring in unions at places like Bethlehem Steel. And yet when you'll see also in another part of the film, when we're in Memphis, where 7 baristas got fired in one day at the same place, a lot of them didn't even know what a union was, didn't think somebody in what they saw as a fast food job could even be in a union. So this was an education that these young people took up this union thing.
No, go ahead.
So yeah, I actually wanted to ask a little bit about what attracted you to Buffalo in this story. I know we've spoken in the past, Mark. Do you mind sharing a little bit about your personal history with unions as well?
Well, in my 20s, I was working in a steel mill, member of the Steelworkers Union. I was very politically active, and the company fired me. The union got my job back. And so and later I became a filmmaker. And of course, the reason I came to Buffalo is because that's where it started. I mean, I actually was interviewing other baristas around the country. Then when I understood that the whole thing started at a single Starbucks here in Buffalo, well, then I said, no, we had to go and find out about that part of the story. And that ended up being the biggest portion of the film.
That's wonderful. Alec, you were saying.
Well,
Thank you, Mark.
I feel like a lot of people don't believe now, especially young people, that unions are going to really. What I want to find out is what makes this group different.
Yeah.
I want to ask you, what makes this group different? There's obviously some people who fulfill kind of a leadership role, but what makes this group different from other places in the country where unionizing is something that would never have occurred to them?
Well, I think maybe Will can speak to this too, but I think it's part of what we've been talking about. I mean, there's more of a union consciousness, union support. I mean, my understanding is, and maybe you can talk about this, is, when they would organize the union at a Starbucks or even go on strike, they were getting a lot of support from the community.
Yeah, and I would say too, unions right now enjoy pretty much the highest level of approval rating that they've had in, since Gallup, I think, started doing
Yeah, I think
the polling.
unions are today 70% favorable among the American people, which is the highest since 1965.
And then if you look at 18 to 24-year-olds, it actually rises into the 90s, the low 90s in terms of percentage. So there's a new workforce that sees that things haven't really been working, getting rid of unions, that maybe we should bring them back.
Yeah.
Well, go ahead.
The wage, the raises in wages since that period in time haven't really, correlated with inflation and everything else. So
We'll discuss that. There were raises there at the Starbucks.
So,
But what I want you to do is approach it in a more macro sense, which is, what were the results of the activity, not just wages, but in other things as well.
So
were there changes?
When we were in our very first series of elections, right? And the way that the Starbucks campaign has operated, for those who don't know, is that each location has its own separate election, where it petitions with the federal government. You go in, you cast ballots, and we've done that, I think, well over 1,000 times, which is why we represent now close to 650 stores across the country. But I think that
Changes.
yeah, so when we were in the very first election, before we went to our vote, Starbucks announced that they were going to give a nationwide increase to all of the baristas in the country, and they timed it right before our ballots went out. And part of why they did that is they were holding these captive audience meetings, which are basically like they had flown in close to 200 managers into the city of Buffalo to live in the city for 3 to 6 months, trying to convince about a couple hundred baristas not to unionize, which is insane, right? But then they sat down in these meetings and they said, oh, we actually do have one union location, and it's in Canada. It was organized by the steelworkers in Canada. And they make less money than the other Canadian baristas do. And why is that? Because we issued a pay increase of over $1 billion last weekend to raise nationwide and in Canada the rates of pay for all baristas. There were people in Texas and Louisiana who were going from making $9.50 an hour up to $15 from this pay increase, and it was a massive bribe purely to just be able to say, well, the Canadian union, they actually negotiated less than what Starbucks would generously provide to all of the other workers, and that's what's going to happen to you if you go through this.
Well, one thing you can say about that is, in effect, the union forcing a raise for everybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, you know,
If they were that scared of one vote, imagine how scared they are now, right?
Well, go ahead. No, please.
Include other things other than pay? Like, do you also get like health benefits? I don't know. And the longevity of a barista, as far as like, you know, and I don't know, I may be off base, but the unions are mostly for long-term companies. You know, you're manufacturing stuff. But as a Starbucks employee or anything, like even Tim Hortons, that type of thing, these people are not potentially long-term people. So does that have an effect on it?
Well, so everything is now based in getting a national contract that will secure increases in all of the wages, benefits, and working conditions for Starbucks employees. But in terms of long-term Starbucks workers, there's a lot of them, actually.
Yeah,
You'd be surprised.
You'll see in the film, one of the Starbucks baristas was there for 13 years and was fired because he was active in the union. Another barista was there for 11 years, and they were still only making $15 an hour. Yeah, and part of the problem with Starbucks is nobody's considered full-time. And a local manager...
35 hours.
A local manager controls the hours.
Yeah.
So if they like you, if you're anti-union, they'll give you more hours. If they don't like you, if you're pro-union, they cut your hours and you lose your benefits.
Yeah, so just,
Called union busting.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's illegal, and they're being sued in many different cases. So.
who's our...
That's tonight.
Oh, she'll be there.
Yes.
She will be, okay.
Well, I'm wondering, because you were in Ithaca working when all this was going on and you've come over to Buffalo now, do you think the character of this city has anything to do with this movement and how it's picked up steam here? I mean, Buffalo is a blue-collar city. There are more people unionized here than most even larger cities. And we have a lot of pride in our history of unions. And so do you think that played into everything? I know in the film some people are legacy union babies, and you'll see that as well.
100%. I think, there's an exceptional community here in Buffalo. We call it the city of good neighbors. I think what's kind of more neighborly than being able to talk to a coworker about, how things could be better for you, for them, for everyone, at your store, at your factory, at your office, wherever you're working. And to be able to negotiate a contract with your employer to, it's a rising tide, right? It raises all ships. And I think Buffalo has that sort of at its heart. A lot of really phenomenal people around here that became sort of national leaders of this campaign and this movement. And 100%, I mean, I think it could have happened somewhere else, but it would have been different. And this is such a large movement that's inspired tens of thousands of people, and it started here. And I think it's something we should all be proud of.
Did you want to say something?
I want to say one thing. You could say it's the revolt of the Rust Belt. I mean, because, you know, these factories were shut down, jobs shipped overseas, and these are the children and grandchildren of the people that happened to.
It's interesting to me when you listen to watch the film and listen to the details of this story, where I mean, the amount of money they're talking about, it just seems so ridiculous to me. I work in an industry where people are overpaid by a factor of 500,000. You know what I mean? They just, I mean, people at certain times, that's changing, by the way. I mean, they're drastically slashing people's salaries in California and the movie and TV business as aggressively, because if you can't sell more tickets, you got to cut costs. That's all they care about now is cutting costs. But but when you talk about what is the last? You're not still there, are you?
No.
No. When did you last work there?
October of 2022.
Okay. And how much were you making an hour, if you don't mind me asking that?
When I left Starbucks, I think I was making $15.26 an hour.
An hour.
Yeah.
And this was after the big, huge salary explosion that you benefited from.
Correct.
And
yeah.
what was it before that?
Yes. So I think it's something too where when I went to file my taxes at the end of the year, I think I had filed for $14,000.
That's the median income of a barista at Starbucks is $14,000, and the CEO is making over $100 million a year, more than 6,000 times as much.
How many baristas is one of those? Did anyone do the math on that?
Well, their newest CEO, I believe he makes 6,666 times the salary of the average barista.
Yes,
It's a good number.
Well, in my lifetime, this thing. Well, is in my lifetime, that's what's changed dramatically, which was that now pay for these people has to be rated in terms of the valuation of the company. So you can literally say to people they want, like at Disney and places like that, they want to get paid 30, 40, 60, 70 million dollars a year, depending on the valuation of the company. There's not an amount of money that's like, listen, Bob, listen, Susan, would you be happy with 20 or 25 million dollars a year? No. They got to have a lot more than that. So it's pretty crazy. But no. So when you left, why'd you leave?
I was fired.
You're fired.
Yes.
Okay. Describe that. 'Cause what I want to hear about is the culture there of these companies where someone else is going to be the bad guy. You turn to someone and say, you're going to take care of all this stuff. And a message trickles down from management, and someone said, no. When you were fired, how was that conveyed to you?
Well, it's an interesting process, and I think it's covered pretty well.
Was it
and
written on your
thoroughly in
pumpkin
the
spice latte?
documentary.
You're fired.
No. I actually, I was sat down probably like a dozen times where it was like they couldn't quite bring themselves to do it because they knew it was so bad. They knew, I think, a lot of like the lower level managers.
He was wearing a suicide awareness pin because one of the other members of the organizing committee had committed suicide, possibly because of the harassment from Starbucks. And he was fired because he was wearing a suicide awareness pin, and they tried to ban that.
Right.
You'll see that in the film, the actual story of that.
Right. They said it wasn't becoming of the brand, that by wearing a pin about awareness that you might encourage other people to harm themselves. It was so backward, right?
Did they not offer for you to never do it again? You can keep your job, just don't ever do that? Did they offer?
Yeah, they did offer for me to do that, but it was a ridiculous offer, I thought.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Good for you, absolutely.
Ruth, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah,
Do you have a question?
I mean, because this goes back to when they raised the minimum wage all over raised the minimum, Starbucks raised all over the country, because I think what a lot of people don't realize is how low the minimum wage is, how low the federal minimum wage is, and there are many states in this country that do not have a state minimum wage. They are following the federal minimum wage, and it is so far below the poverty.
Yeah, I think the federal minimum wage is something like $7 and
Yeah,
something an
so
hour,
it's
and
$7.25
many
an hour.
restaurant
Yeah,
workers
yes.
do not even get the minimum wage.
Right.
They get something like $2 an
Right,
hour.
because
Right.
of the tip laws.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So, so that's why they got such a big raise, and then did they, have they continued, do you know? I mean, has Starbucks continued raises on top of that, or has it fallen back on a state by state?
It's really interesting because the campaign has been so long term at this point that yes, originally they did try and keep offering new things to convince people. One, you don't need to unionize, and two, if you did unionize, now you're not gonna get these things. That's illegal to withhold new benefits
Yeah.
like that without offering to bargain. We had waived our right to bargain, so they were allowed to implement any of these things that they were trying to offer. But now with the new CEO, the one who's making the exorbitant amount of money, not to be confused with the one who made exorbitant amount of money before him, that he's actually taking away some of those things that they gave because, including, I mean, one of the things that we're talking about, it's not just economic, but an expanded dress code, like, oh, we're going to put new colors into this palette. And then new CEO comes in, he says, no, it's just black now. We need standards. We need to, develop the culture. And customers really care what color shirt you're wearing.
One of the reasons I was always drawn to this film, because I've known Mark for a long, long time and did a couple other things with him, is that my friend said it best. My friend is an American who moved to Paris and lived there for many years. He went over there to do certain kind of work. And I went over to meet him, and this is quite a while ago. And he said that what he noticed was that as the sobriety movement moved through the country, and people wanted to drink less alcohol, of course Starbucks would exploit that by charging you the same amount you pay for a cocktail to have a cup of coffee. And you sit with people, and you sit and socialize with them, and have an $8 mocha, frappa, wappa, whatever. You have your drink. It's like $8 if you throw some money in the cup,
Yep.
and that's the same as like a rail drink in a bar. And they've turned that to their advantage, where this is like this is the drink people have together now in some social context.
Caffeine is a lesser drug than alcohol, I guess.
I disagree. I disagree.
Okay. Well, I just want to add one thing to what Will was saying just then. You'll see in the film there comes a point when Starbucks actually gives raises to non-union employees and does not give raises to union employees in an effort to basically bribe people to not vote for the union.
To describe to them, well, they're going to see the movie. You're going to see the movie today? Okay, no, never mind. They don't describe it. The blanket.
Oh, the blanket. That's
Oh, yeah.
We'll do the blanket and then we have a question.
No, we're not going to talk about the blanket. Let
you
them
have to see
it.
the movie.
You have to see the movie
See
for
the
the
movie,
blanket.
yeah.
You won't know what's under the blanket until
Right.
then. Yeah.
Right.
So, Mark, if you approached the baristas here about it, I guess, Will, I'm a little curious what you thought when there was going to be a movie made, if someone approached you about it versus you approaching them about the movie. And I guess for anyone, what is then the hope for the movement that would come from this movie? Like, what are the goals?
Is that to Will or to me?
To all of you, I think.
Well, Will, go. Well, have you kept in touch with everybody there?
Yeah,
Some?
yeah.
What's going on there now?
Will's a
It's the same-
union
Well,
full-time union
Okay,
organizer
good, there you
now.
go.
Yeah.
Right. That's your work.
Yes, I work
They're
for.
paying you the union.
Yes,
Oh,
yes.
great. Hope I help more than $14,000. What's it like there now?
So, I mean, things I think are really bad. I think, maybe even worse than when I was there, that kind of constant downward pressure, has continued on. And so, you have an even worse sense of like the staffing. One of the major lessons I think that Starbucks had from the pandemic was you can actually just reduce the number of people in the cafe and they'll all just work much harder. And then you just save a lot of money because, these people are basically drowning and, just trying to stay above water for you. And so I think that's gotten worse. They've added in like these new kind of more ridiculous things, like you might have heard about, like writing on each of the cups. It has to be every cup a message that's unique and special and, makes the customer feel that it's personalized. But what I have to say about that is that the company just last week fired a barista in Buffalo at the Sheridan Bailey location because they didn't like what he wrote on a cup.
What did he write, Mori?
He wrote, I'd like to take a sip or something like that. And it was, someone called into corporate, complained. They thought, great, this is one of the leaders that's still at the store after 4 years. They no prior write-ups, he got fired. And it's from this thing that they just recently imposed that's way more stress that no one really cares about. And especially if you, like, even if you did think, like, oh, that's so nice, they put, like, a face on my cup, well, do you still feel the same way if you know that it's a mandated thing that the barista is being told to put on to manipulate you?
And one thing I wanted to say, if people who know about factories in the old days, one of the ways they would exploit the workers would be to speed up the line. You're on an assembly line, they run it faster and faster and make it harder and harder. Well, what Will's describing is basically the same idea. Get more work from less people. And
we had a guy when this is all bringing back some of the, I'm not going to say horror stories, but the interesting stories of when I was a kid. In a mall near my hometown on Long Island was a Nathan's hot dog place, like in New York. And it was a big, sprawling room with tiled floors and chairs and everything over it, plastic and easy to clean. And our manager would have the manager would have a bucket, like a bucket to mop the floor with. And it was the biggest bucket you've ever seen in your life. It was this gigantic round thing on wheels filled with soapy water. And he would take it, he'd tip it over, and all the water would go washing all along the floor and up against the wall and cover the entire perimeter of this dining room. And he'd sit there and say, I'm punching your clocks in 10 minutes. So that means you're only going to get paid for 10 minutes worth of work to get this job done, you and another guy, which would take you at least a half an hour. Now, it's not something crazy, but, and I'm not trying to say it's Dickensian, that might not be the right word, but the way that people abuse young people in labor situations is appalling. They just stand over them, they've got the authority, they're older maybe, and they're probably not very nice sometimes, and they're really, really riding these people to do this. Go ahead, I'm sorry.
Oh, no.
No, go ahead.
That made me think of something, which is kind of, I really enjoyed in the film, Mark, that you seem to have a certain closeness with the documentary participants. There's an exchange going on, a little bit of knowledge and sharing of stories. I've really enjoyed in recent years this trend towards moving away from the language of subject, right? Because it assumes that the participant isn't actually helping to sculpt the story, that there's no exchange going on behind the scenes. So I really kind of like that you can feel that presence and that comfortable. So I'm just curious, kind of how did you get everyone so comfortable? Will, how do you feel being a documentary participant and then coming on and, being on the panel as well and being, This is an exchange more than a power structure like Alec was bringing up a moment ago.
I'm someone who often I'll close my eyes when I see a recording of myself. So, I'll see you all much later tonight, not just when we're back at the theater, but when the screen is over and I can open my eyes again. But in terms of the actual interview, it was a very interesting experience. I think Mark has some background and knows what he's talking about and has a real thoughtfulness sort of to the different questions and how we just talked about the campaign, and I think that there's a lot of insight that is a result of that. So
Well, yeah, and having been myself a union organizer, I think I could understood these baristas and could speak to their language. I was in that place when I was in my 20s, so I think that helped establish a rapport and a trust.
I think it's so important and it does come through, and all that communication, what's happening behind the scenes and talking to each other about union building and
Well, and I wanted to say one other thing that came up earlier. People, I think there's an idea that at these fast food places or even a Starbucks, these are jobs for teenagers, they're part-time jobs. Couldn't be further from the truth. I mean, some of these people have been working there a long time. Anybody who's working a full-time job should be making enough to live on.
I agree.
Yeah. And the idea that it's just for teenagers is part-time, whatever, that's part of the way they get over with exploiting people.
I used to work. No, go ahead, please.
We we had a.
No, yeah, you go ahead.
Yeah. This is mostly for Will, but anyone who wants to answer. Can you talk a little bit about where the campaign is at now? I know things are like very much stalled, blocked. I feel like there was so much news about like all these victories with all the votes and stuff in like 2021 and 2022.
Mhm.
So I'm glad to see that like with this film that all of this is like back in the news more than I think it has been in the last year or two. So can you just talk about kind of like raising consciousness about like what's happening right now and also like describing what that's like?
Yeah, so I think firstly it just needs to be said again that we need to get a contract, a national contract that solidifies gains for baristas all across the country, and that is the number one focus, and having, you know, millions of people, you know, being in support of the tens of thousands of baristas who are in this fight and have been in this fight. I think for Starbucks, you know, they really have a problem, which is that because it is each store is its own election, they can never get rid of the union. That's what they've been trying to do for 4 years. You know, there's over a dozen stores that file and win their election every month. So, you know, people even say like, oh, well, Starbucks closed like, you know, a few hundred stores. And, you know, a lot of those were union stores, a disproportionate percentage. But we are growing and filing more and more each month. And so I think that's kind of the crisis that they're in, because we're not going away. We're not going to stop fighting. And we really are calling the question, I think, very shortly on the fight to get a contract and a good first contract for baristas around the
And
country.
you're
so.
trying, the union is trying to get people to sign a pledge, right? Can you talk about that?
Yes, so there is it's a no contract, no coffee pledge, which you can find if you just look up no contract, no coffee on Google, or if you go to the Starbucks Workers United website. I think that, you know, we've seen some of these like practice pickets around the country. There was a news cycle fairly recently about that. Well, we're practicing for a reason, right? We would like to just practice, and hopefully maybe the company will come to their senses, and we'll get the first contract done. But you know, we'll have to see about that. I think we're ready to really escalate and call the question, like I was saying. So
It's not like they're organizing. I know this is a kind of a silly thing to say, but it's not like they're organizing some industry like sewing clubs, or I don't know, like something obscure or less significant. I mean, this is Starbucks. Where in New York, you know, you knew how powerful Starbucks was with all the stores they've closed in the last couple of years. You know, they've just changed their whole imprint. In New York, they were on opposing corners. They'd have one and another one a block away, because in New York, a block is like another universe for some people. But then they would have this. We're going to get to you in 1 second. But you know, when I was a kid, again, that abuse thing. You know, I mean, when I was a kid, we had jobs that were part of federal programs where they paid us $2.25 an hour. We made $90 a week, no taxes, to trim limbs. They're obstructing stop signs. And we'd be in a truck with a bunch of older guys, all who'd had careers doing something else. This was a second pension for them, all older guys. And I jump out of the truck and I'm cutting the limbs. And they were like, hey, Alec, slow down. You cut 3 limbs before lunch, they're going to want 3 limbs every morning. Take it easy, sonny, you know. And but this abuse of young people, it is abuse. And again, I said it's not Dickensian, but it is abuse. What did you want to say? I'm sorry.
Well, the question is actually for you, because I know Mark and Bob I've known for decades, and I love the work that you guys do, always shining a light on situations like this that need more awareness. And I love that you're here supporting the film, and I know you do things like this, and I would love to know a little of your passion behind supporting projects like this with Mark, and a little of Nathan's and a little of some of your experiences in life, but.
Well, but some people will come to you and ask you to support independent film, and they want money. You know, I worked to raise money. I hosted a couple of dinners with, God, they're on the tip of my tongue, Disturbing the Universe, about Kunstler. And Sarah Kunstler and his other daughter, the 2 daughters, made the film about their father, William Kunstler. And they needed money. They got to the finish line, and they were going to sell the movie to Netflix or whoever. and they were 40,000 short for archival footage because these news networks charge, and as you know, this horrible fees they charge for this stuff, which it should be free to the public. Really, it's public airwaves, and I've been involved in documentary film for a long time. I'm the co-chairman of the Hamptons Film Festival, where I'm going to go tomorrow morning, go back to my film festival tomorrow.
Well, we did a series back in the 90s about documentary film.
He and I did a couple things. We did a bunch of things together. And in the Hamptons, the film festival is now and around what was formerly known as the Columbus Day Weekend in New York. But in the summer, we have a summer doc series. And we show documentary films in the summer, the end of June, end of July, end of August. We have that captive audience out there living out there for the summer. And the issue lately over the last 3 or 4 years has been the docs are programming now. Docs have changed dramatically. We used to give, the starter's pistol was Sundance. And our people would go to Sundance and we'd have 8, 10, 12 films we wanted that we had a chance to get because they hadn't been sold yet. Now all the good ones are sold within a matter of a couple of weeks. We can't find 3 we like that we would show. We show a classic doc now. We show older films, like you or whoever we would have, RJ, RJ, yeah, the George Washington of documentary. But we'd show archival films that we really, really love. And but the world of docs has changed so much in the last few years, where everybody's gobbling them up and everybody's in that business now. Everybody's making a doc. But just to say the thing, is anybody here a filmmaker?
Yeah.
A filmmaker. So in the doc world, this is the last thing I'll say, but in the doc world, what was always tough is that you got to get creative. Mm-hmm. If you have talking heads and archival footage, it's deadly. You're not going to get picked up. I mean, just this cut, explosion, fire, police, cut. It's like it's really tired. And people don't know how to invigorate. How many people here saw The Kid Stays in the Picture, the Bob Evans film?
Yeah.
Right, so go see The Kid Stays in the Picture, where they did that layered panels and things. They did like a little bit of artwork that was really cool. Watch The Kid Stays in the Picture is the name of the film. Very, very clever how they did the artwork there. But I'm just obsessed with documentary films, obsessed. And when he told me he was doing a movie about this, and I watched his first cuts, I was like, oh my God, it was just... And Howard Schultz was on my podcast. Howard Schultz came on my podcast, and you watch the film tonight. And you'll see Howard Schultz in a way you haven't really seen him before.
The kids stay in the what?
The kid stays in the picture. Yeah, about Robert Evans. Go ahead.
We've got one over there, and I just want to follow up really quickly because we don't maybe have a ton of documentary filmmakers here, but there's a lot that'll be listening. When you're using archival footage, say from Starbucks, and they probably don't like what you're making, did you go fair use, or do you pay for stuff? Do you invest in your lawyer or in the footage?
When you're taking on Starbucks, you better have a good lawyer. Yes, we use a fair amount of footage from Starbucks. In fact, this whole meeting that Will described and that refers to the blanket, where Howard Schultz himself came to Buffalo to try to talk the baristas out of voting for the union. This was a video we took off of the Starbucks website. And I mean, I was shocked that they actually put this video up on the website.
Someone wasn't thinking clearly over there at Starbucks.
So, yeah, so there's fair use. In other words, it's copyrighted material owned by Starbucks, but our lawyers approved it fair use. We have an insurance policy that covers that.
Who here has seen the movie? You've seen it, okay. In the back, you've seen the movie? Yeah, okay. We have time for one more, right?
We have time for one
Can
more.
I just do a real quick one?
Yeah.
So 900 stores have been closed nationwide, Starbucks, and yet a few blocks away from where I mean, you wouldn't remember me, but I was beeping and I was coming up to you guys all the time outside of the Elmwood store. And now, and now, a few blocks away, there's a brand new Starbucks. So, what's that strategy all about?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, right? They had this building that was owned by Carl Palladino, and then it got sold off, and
Stop right there. We're good.
and well, yeah, yeah, what are they going to do with the first union Starbucks, which is a sort of historic landmark at this point? I mean, there have been people that have driven to the store up from DC, have flown in from California just to sort of see the first one where this happened, right? And it seems like I don't know. My understanding is that they plan to keep both, but we don't know what that means in 5 years or 10.
Is he doing
or-
a Q&A with us after the screen?
He'll be there.
Is he going to come on stage with
No, that's going to be Gianna.
But nobody, but not him.
Right.
Not you. Okay. Well, I want to just mention, which way is the restroom? Right out here? That way?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think we're gonna unfortunately have to wrap up.
Well, let me just also add one thing, which is that my kids would take dance class, my sons, and I take them to dance class. And while they had a little break, one would take a class, the other didn't have one for another 45 minutes. We go to Starbucks on Broadway and downtown in lower Manhattan. When you drive out to Long Island, where I live, I drive from New York out to Long Island. There's a Starbucks there in a town called Manorville that the entire world goes to the Manorville Starbucks. They sell millions of gallons of something every day there. It's drive-through. It's just everybody goes to Starbucks and on the road. You pull off, you go through the drive-through, you go keep going. And my point is that the Starbucks experience is a really cool experience. The Starbucks experience is a very pleasant experience, something you want and you want to do. And the only ones ruining it is Starbucks. Otherwise, it's pretty good. But to know that people there that are kind and warm and thoughtful and make you feel welcome in this retail transactional thing. I mean, I've gone into Starbucks where the people are lovely. They're so lovely and they're doing their best with the bombs coming in all the time and being attacked all the time. And the only thing that's missing here is the courtesy from this company. It's heartbreaking because otherwise Starbucks I think is pretty cool.
Can I add one more thing
Yes,
off of
please.
that, which is that, kind of back to this idea of, oh, this is unskilled work, or, this is, for people in high school, college. You can actually tell when somebody has some experience in customer service, in retail, in, the restaurant industry, in the service industry. Those people are very highly skilled and they are worth a lot. And I think that the labor movement is ready to take on this industry as, a place that it's a huge percentage of the economy here in the United States, and it's something that's valuable and that people should deserve to be compensated for and to be able to live off of.
I'm gonna run to the restroom.
Yeah,
I'm gonna miss you.
We're gonna wrap up. I'm sorry. Absolutely, I agree with you, Will, and I don't think there needs to be a hierarchy of labor. It's your time, and it's valuable. So thank you so much, Alec. Thank you so much, Mark. Thank you so much, Will. Thank you so much to the audience. We will see you at 7:15 at the North
you're
Park
coming
Theater
tonight,
for
right?
Baristas
Yeah,
versus
yeah.
Billionaires.
Even though you
So-
don't want to look at
Afterwards,
yourself?
we'll all
Yeah, even though I don't want to look at
hang out,
myself,
check out the
I'll
website.
hear through
Duendes,
it.
Silas City.
Just bring my voice